Welcome, everyone. So glad you're joining me for a brand new explainer today. I am absolutely thrilled to dive into this one with you because we're going to be looking at something we walk past, sit inside, and just stare at every single day without truly seeing it. I'm talking about the built environment. We so often think of buildings as just, well, mere shelters, right? Four walls, a roof, maybe some windows. But today, we're going to explore how architecture is actually this incredibly powerful canvas for historical memory. It's literally how we tell our deepest, most profound cultural stories in brick, steel, and bronze.
Okay, let's take a quick look at our roadmap. We'll be hitting 1. The story in the stones. 2. Cathedrals of the Gridiron. 3. Engineering the beautiful game. 4. Integration of the arts. 5. A column of history. And finally, 6. Monuments of our identity. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. The story in the stones. Narrative and architecture. To really wrap our heads around this concept, we are going on a fascinating journey, and honestly, it comes with a bit of thematic whiplash. We're going to start way back in the grimy, industrial football grounds of early 20th century Britain, and then we're going to transport ourselves entirely to the vibrant, deliberate modernism of mid-century Mexico. But to kick things off, we have to look past the obvious function of a space and find that repository of memory and culture that's hiding right in plain sight. So, I want to ask you this directly. Can a building tell a story? When you look at a wall or a staircase or a roofline, are you just seeing the engineering, or are you actually reading a narrative? This brings us perfectly to the two main pillars we're looking at today. We are going to explore the accidental, almost completely unintentional storytelling of British sports architecture, where purely functional needs somehow created sacred spaces. And then we're going to contrast that sharply against the deliberately sculpted, highly intentional Mexican civic art, which was designed specifically to teach a nation its own history. Section 2. Cathedrals of the Gridiron. Archibald Leitch. What's absolutely fascinating here is looking at a man who never actually set out to build monuments. Born in Glasgow back in 1865, Archibald Leitch started his career designing highly functional, no-nonsense industrial buildings. We're talking tea factories in the Kandyan Kingdom of Ceylon, which is modern-day Sri Lanka, as well as standard factories right in his home city. But then, in 1899, he was commissioned to build Ibrox Park for his boyhood heroes, the Rangers Football Club. And from there, he brought this highly functional, totally industrial aesthetic directly into the world of sports. He went on to design parts of incredibly famous grounds, places like Anfield, Old Trafford, and Chelsea's Stamford Bridge. Leitch had some very specific architectural signatures. These absolutely were not meant to be visually stunning works of art. They were heavily influenced by his factory designs. He built these two-tiered stands, he used his trademark crisscross steel balustrades right at the front of the upper tiers, and he covered them with pitched roofs featuring these very distinctive pediments facing the pitch. But here is the real magic of it all. Because of the sheer passion of the crowds that filled them, these deeply functional industrial spaces accidentally became the cathedrals of modern sport. They ended up holding the collective emotional memory of entire cities. Section 3. Engineering the beautiful game. Safety and mass crowds. Now, all of this builds to a pivotal and, frankly, very emotional turning point, where the stakes of architecture become quite literally a matter of life and death. In 1902, disaster struck. During a match at Ibrox, the very stadium Leitch had designed for his boyhood club, a bank of substandard wooden terracing collapsed. It was a horrific tragedy. 25 lives were lost. It served as a deeply sobering reminder that when you gather the masses together, the physical structure holding them bears an immense, undeniable human responsibility. So the really crucial thing to understand here is how Leitch responded. He was actually in attendance that day. He witnessed the disaster firsthand. And rather than just walking away from it, he convinced the club to let him fix it. He completely re-engineered the public experience of live sports. He patented a brand new form of strengthened terracing to ensure that a tragedy like that could never happen again. He was hired to rebuild Ibrox, and because of this intense, renewed focus on safety, mass crowd dynamics, and structural integrity, he became Britain's foremost football architect for the next 4 decades. His buildings weren't just holding people anymore, they were actively protecting them. Section 4. Integration of the arts. Modern Mexican identity.
Okay, brace yourselves because we are doing a major thematic pivot here. We are stepping away from the damp industrial sports grounds of Scotland and diving headfirst into the incredibly colorful, deliberate world of 1960s modern Mexico. Back in the mid-20th century, the international style of modern architecture was pretty much sweeping the globe. But critics often found it a bit cold, faceless, and totally disconnected from local culture. Well, Mexico had a brilliant response. They called it integración plástica, the integration of the arts. They took these sleek, modern buildings and intentionally united them with monumental works by visual artists. This movement enlisted renowned creators, like the incredible Chavez Morado brothers. Jose was a painter, Tomas a sculptor, and together they were commissioned to give faceless modernism a distinctly Mexican soul, blending ancient pre-Hispanic aesthetics right in with the New World. Take the massive 40-foot original El Paraguas, or the Umbrella Column, at the National Museum of Anthropology in Mexico City, which was completed in 1964. The prominent architect Pedro Ramirez Vasquez designed the museum itself, but he brought in the Chavez Morado brothers to create this monumental bronze centerpiece. Jose drew the intricate figures, and his brother Tomas meticulously carved the raised reliefs. It was essentially designed to look like a single pillar holding up a massive space-age canopy, perfectly marrying architectural engineering with deep cultural storytelling. Well, a few years later, American philanthropists Walter and Leonore Annenberg traveled to Mexico. And they were so utterly captivated by this column and by Mexico's history in general that they immediately contacted the architect. They actually commissioned a stunning, half-scale replica for the entry court of their spectacular mid-century modern desert oasis in California, a place known as Sunnylands. They even had the original artists, Jose and Tomas, recreate the magic, allowing water to beautifully cascade down the bronze right into a bed of river rocks. Section 5. A column of history, reading the narrative. Now, unlike Leach's stadiums, this column was designed so you could literally read its carved narrative exactly like you would a history book. Let me be your tour guide here for a second. When you really examine these stunning bronze carvings, you're looking at the visual synthesis of Mexico's history. Right down at the base, you have the eagle and the jaguar. These are deeply venerated pre-Hispanic symbols representing indigenous cultures. But piercing right through the middle of them is a sword, which represents the Spanish arrival and conquest. And then above that, we see the profiles of two men, one indigenous, one Spanish, symbolizing the integration of the bloodlines that ultimately created the modern Mexican identity. It is just brilliant how meticulously planned the storytelling was. The column is strictly organized across the 4 cardinal points of the compass. It makes a complex, centuries-long history instantly digestible. The east side faces the rising sun and tells the story of integration. The west side faces the setting sun and tells the story of projection, which is Mexico's modern reach into the world, even featuring an atomic symbol. And then both the north and south sides represent the fierce, bloody struggles for freedom. When you view these different sides, the contrast is honestly breathtaking. On one hand, you have the intricate, almost peaceful layering of the east side, showing the roots of the cultures slowly coming together. But then, look at the starkness of the north side. Those are 3 daggers physically piercing the bronze column, drawing blood. Those wounds specifically represent the War of Independence from Spain, the 1857 Constitution, and the 1910 Agrarian Revolution. The architecture is literally wearing the scars of the nation's past. Section 6. Monuments of our identity, physical manifestations. Let's bring these 2 very different architectural pillars together to synthesize what this all means for us today. Because whether it's a roaring, multi-tiered stadium stand in Glasgow protecting its faithful fans, or a silent cascading bronze fountain in the California desert standing as a triumph of international cultural diplomacy, the underlying truth is exactly the same. Architecture serves as the physical manifestation of our shared human experience. It anchors us. I absolutely love this quote from Walter Annenberg when he was asked years later why he went to such incredible lengths to bring this massive piece of art to his home. He simply said, "I did want that column because it depicts the history of Mexico." And honestly, that is the core takeaway of our explainer today. We go to incredible lengths to shape our structures, but in return, over generations, those structures profoundly shape us, and they preserve exactly who we are. Which brings me to one final thought for you to chew on when you leave this explainer today. Next time you take a walk outside, really look closely at the brickwork, the facades, and the community spaces around you. Ask yourself, what stories do the buildings in your city tell about who you are? I'm your host. Thank you so much for learning with me today, and I highly encourage you to keep looking just a little bit closer at the world around you.